Hello and welcome to Politics here on France 24. On the menu today, the Karachi Gate. Back in 2002, 11 French people were killed in a bombing in Pakistan, and the investigation has now become a real political bombshell. So with me to discuss the issue here today on the set is Myriam Keladi, who's a lawyer with the Olivier Maurice law firm who represents the families of the victims of the Karachi attack. Also on the set, Pascal Henry, who's an investigative journalist, co-producer of Karachi Bombing, The Impossible Investigation, and last but not least, David Gauthier-Villard, who is the correspondent for the Wall Street Journal here in Paris. So in the early hours of May 8, 2002, a bomb exploded near a bus carrying French engineers in Karachi, Pakistan. 11 of the engineers died. Since then, the investigation into attack has morphed into an astonishing flurry of allegations of illegal political financing back here in France. The revelations keep coming out, including from some rather unlikely quarters.
The chief witness in the latest chapter of the Karachi affair steps out of the shadows. Hélène de Yougoslavie, the estranged wife of Thierry Gaubert, confirmed that her husband, who was then an advisor to Nicolas Sarkozy, collected money in Switzerland in the early 1990s. Money that, according to her, he then passed on to Nicolas Bazir, Prime Minister Edouard Balladure's chief of staff and later campaign director.
I confirm what I said about my husband's travels, often abroad, from which he brought back bags of cash. There was money, but I don't know where it came from.
It's the latest twist in a labyrinthine case that stretches back to the early 90s. Edouard Balladure's election campaign was allegedly funded by kickbacks from payments made to Pakistani intermediaries. This was in exchange for Augusta submarine contracts between France and Pakistan. Former Interior Minister Brice Hortefeux warned Thierry Gaubert about his wife's comments on the 14th of September in a telephone conversation that was wiretapped on the order of the judge investigating the case. The Élysée Palace issued a communiqué earlier this week saying Nicolas Sarkozy had no role in the funding of Edouard Balladure's campaign. But the latest revelation involving members of his circle are embarrassing only 7 months from next year's presidential election.
Myriam Keladi, you're representing the families of the victims. You've sued Brice Hortefeux for obstructing justice and maybe pressuring witness. We're told, countersued for libel. You're getting very close to Nicolas Sarkozy.
Exactly. We are getting very close of Nicolas Sarkozy because we think that if today Nicolas Sarkozy is not examined by the judge only because he's president, so he has this immunity, but we're coming closer and closer, and this is what we were saying for nearly 2 years now, because in December 2009, when we brought the first action to the judge Van Rynbeek, we already said that we thought that Nicolas Sarkozy was in the middle of this corruption system because he was the minister of the budget, so he ratified all the contracts signed between France and Pakistan, in which we have these commissions and kickbacks.
The Élysée Palace has issued a statement last week saying Nicolas Sarkozy is not involved in any shape or form with all of this. How can you be so certain that he's a central player? Aren't you just playing politics to try to get at him?
We are playing law, not politics, and we are so sure because, as I've explained to you, Nicolas Sarkozy was the minister of the budget. The procedures that are followed in every contract, such contracts, are always that the contract is ratified by the Minister of the Budget. That's why...
He has said he opposed it at the time.
He said he opposed it, but it's quite curious that it's the first time that he says this. And I would like to add something, to focus on something on this communiqué of the Élysée, issued by the Élysée. How can the chief of executive know what is in the file, as the file is led by the judicial power? This is also another breach of the separation of the powers. So this is a real question, and you can easily compare it to Brice Hortefeux wiretapping. How is it possible that in this Karachi case we have so many obstructions of the chief executive or of the executive in the investigation?
Pascal Henry, you've worked on this quite a bit. I mean, there is the investigation about the attack, but now I really want to focus on those allegations of illegal political financing. How serious are the allegations in general and against Nicolas Sarkozy himself?
First, for the kickbacks, the first rumors or information it was in 1998. That was the first time we have heard that there's a kickback on those big arms deals between France and Pakistan and France and Saudi Arabia. And we know to give the evidence, it's always very tricky because it's only a bag of cash, you know. But we know that because there's many cases happening centering on those arms deals that occur years and years and years. And so we all know, I mean, as journalists or lawyers, we know that. But to prove it, it's another matter.
Right. David Gutifa, are you surprised by this kind of outpouring of information in the media, but also, as I said, you know, there are some people close to Nicolas Sarkozy who have been put under formal investigation. It doesn't mean they will be convicted, but nevertheless, it's getting closer to him.
That is why, you know, more immediately, because we have to wait to see where where the investigation is going. But more immediately, the consequence for Mr. Sarkozy is that a fairly large number of former friends, former aides, or current aides are being summoned by an investigating magistrate to explain what role they played in this alleged illegal campaign financing. And that is what is clearly embarrassing for the president, is to see the succession of people who are relatively close friends or close aides being questioned every day by an investigating magistrate.
I mean, does he have a point when he says this magistrate, Renaud van Ruijnbeek, who's well known as a DART investigator, is maybe trying to get him for political vendetta or something else?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard that from Mr. Sarkozy say that. Some of his supporters have suggested that. Well, so far it seems that the judge has been able to hear all the people he wanted to hear. There's still a question over whether the government will make available a number of documents that were classified in recent years, and it's also unclear whether Mr. Sarkozy himself would want to answer more precisely on his alleged role.
But before Mr. Sarkozy is Mr. Balladur. And we know now that the financing of the presidential campaign in 1995 was illegal. It is now well known because in the Conseil constitutionnel, that is the highest court, they write it, they investigate it, and they show it that there's no answer where come from the money. So it's illegal. Now,
although the council validated the campaign accounts at the time.
Because Roland Dumas said when he has been interviewed.
It was a deal because the other candidate, in fact, Mr. Chirac, who won the campaign, the election, and was also with illegal funding, and so they make kind of deal. But in fact, we know now it is proven by the Conseil constitutionnel that the financement of the campaign was illegal.
Right, but the Balladur camp is claiming that this was cash from donations, from selling T-shirts.
Yes, T-shirts.
Do you have strong evidence that this money was coming from kickbacks linked to arms sales?
the investigations are still going on. So I can't tell you that we have a strong evidence of this or this, because first, it's under the secret. And second of all, I think it's very important to keep it under the secret because, first, because it's legal. And second of all, because we are going on and going on. And as you see, 2 years after we've said that Nicolas Sarkozy was in the middle of the corruption, we are now to not Brice Hortefeux, but to Thierry Gaubert and Nicolas Bazir. Nicolas Bazir was the director of Edouard Balladure's campaign. Thierry Gaubert was one of the closest advisor of Nicolas Sarkozy. We pretend, and we do have evidence about these kickbacks, but it's so complicated, and we have so many companies that have been built in order to protect the money, not to have a straight line of the money coming back from Pakistan to France. That is very complicated, and that's why we have an investigation. Just to make it clear, when you ask me if we were so sure about the participation of Nicolas Sarkozy, he always says, or at least the Élysée always says, that they will bring an action or they will sue us for libeling or slandering, and it has been never done. We have been never attacked on that. Why? Because under French law, if they do so, if they sue us for this, then they give us the opportunity of bringing all the evidence of what we've said. And this might be dangerous. Because I think, and I'm nearly sure that they know we do have the evidence.
But just to follow up, I mean, you've complained a lot about obstruction of justice, but it seems the judge is doing his work, as David said, that he's interrogating whoever he wants. He's putting them under formal investigation. So obstruction is not there, it seems.
Different. As an example of obstruction, the Nautilus report has been published in the newspapers in 2008. He's dated on 2002. So 6 years it has been hidden.
It's a report saying that the bombing was maybe linked to kickbacks and not due to an Islamic group.
So this was known in 2002.
I'm talking about now.
Now I think that the case is become so huge that they can't hide it more and more. But about all the documents that are classified, it's absolutely a lie that the politics says we have declassified everything. Example, we asked for the declassification of a contract of 124 pages. They will unclassify the first pages, I'm sorry. And they will say we have declassified it, but the four first pages are the introduction or maybe a summary or something, but we don't have the contract.
I see. How serious is this politically for Nicolas Sarkozy? Is this maybe something that's involving the Parisian political press, or do you think people are saying, because there's this, there are also allegations that he maybe got money from Liliane Bettencourt, France's richest woman, allegations of spying on journalists? I mean, all this comes together and there's this kind of strange mix.
I think the elections are in just 7 months now, and so it creates a climate that is negative for Mr. Sarkozy and may dent his efforts to. In recent months, Mr. Sarkozy had been trying to steer away from this perception that he was a hands-on president, this hyperkinetic president who was sleeping 3 hours a night and dealing with fixing everything that was wrong in France. So in recent months he's been trying to appear more as a statesman who deals with important matters such as the war in Libya, and the succession of scandals or allegations is probably going to affect this effort to appear as a statesman.
And Pascal-Henri, do you think that the Karachi case is maybe the most damaging for him, because it is linked and indirectly maybe, and we don't have time to discuss this, to the slaying of French people, and so there is this association that's
even though if you remember the first day of Mr. Sarkozy's presidency, it was on Avenue des Champs-Élysées in a very wealthy restaurant called the Fouquet's, And they were a close friend of him, and we said bling bling at the time. They're very show-off people, rich and show-off. And those persons involved now in the Karachi Gate are the same as those people that are close to Mr. Sarkozy. So what I want to say is that the feeling of the people, of the population, the citizens who are ready to vote, they have the feeling that something is wrong about that. It's because it's rich people, not very honest, apparently, and so the climate, it will be an issue for the election.
And in this case, you have 11 deaths.
Right. Just as a last question, you're obviously continuing, you're suing and
Yes.
so on. Do you expect new developments as the one we've seen in recent weeks to continue?
We do. We hope that the judge will convoke Edouard Balladur, because I think that now it's needed to have his own impression, because on TV or on the media, he always says that he doesn't know anything about this story. We are to Nicolas Bazir, Thierry Gobert, we're getting closer and closer, and it would be nice to have another explanation about the 10 millions of francs, because selling T-shirts for 10 million francs, no one can believe it anymore. So we really have good hope on the way the investigations are led, and we do think that maybe in the next few days or in the next few weeks, we might discover again and again new things that will lead us again to Nicolas Sarkozy, or at least to this Karachi Gate.
Okay, we don't have more time. I'm sorry. It's obviously a long and complicated story that will certainly continue. I want to thank all of you, and thank you for watching Politics on France 24. See you next week.